All right, so first up, I will let you guys know I am really bad at monitoring the Q&A and chat. I will attempt to do so, but what I will do is Robin is here also. If anything urgent comes up, she's going to be monitoring and will let me know. And anything else that comes up, I'll stop at the end of today's session and we'll review any questions we have. I'm happy to answer your questions even if we don't have time to cover them all today. So please don't be shy about reaching out. So our topic today is dashboard best practices. It looks like there's quite a bit of interest in this. We had a lot of signups for it, so welcome. Glad you're joining us here. I subtitle it Truly Meaningful Metrics because there's not really a shortage of dashboards out there, but there is a shortage, I think, of dashboards that have information that is actually used, consumed regularly, and enhances the quality of decisions going on in businesses right now. So it's a big topic and a small amount of time. So I've tried to be fairly strategic in our focus. My focus is going to be sales, marketing, and customer care types of metrics, but I'm going to talk a lot about principles too. So even if you're looking at finance and operations metrics or whatever it is you're looking for, a lot of the big picture items I talk about are still going to be relevant, but we're also going to talk specifics about sales and marketing. So I want to start by saying I've got some good news and I got some bad news. So this session came out of a conversation that looked a little bit like this one on the screen right now. We had a long time relationship with a client in Florida. A middle manager came in to run the CRM project, kind of inherit ownership of the CRM project. This is about a year and a half ago after we've been working with them for several years. And there was a lot of demand for dashboards in their organization. So they're looking for quick wins, of course. So she asked us, please just set up some dashboards for us, just the standard best practice dashboards. So, we are not in a place from them where we want to engage in design sessions. We don't want to bogger people down right now. Just kind of like, surely there's a set of them we can just install that are best practice dashboards you can install and configure for us. And that might be what you came here expecting today. And the bad news is there really aren't. Every situation truly is different. Probably the easiest way to think about it is if there were a set of just best practice metrics and dashboards that you could just snap in and start using, Microsoft would already have them there for you. And they've tried. There's a lot of them included, whether you're looking in Dynamics 365 customer engagement or AX or inside of Power BI. There's some great dashboards and metrics available in there, but they're kind of one size kind of doesn't really fit anybody or fits everybody just a little bit. So the answer is, if there was a one-size-fits-all solution, it would be out there. And I'm going to refer to a few of those throughout this, but I want you to kind of come into it knowing that this is not about, here's exactly what's going to go onto your dashboards. But the good news is, I am going to show you the metrics. I am going to give you some best practice metrics in here. Because I'm going to do that, the other thing I want to suggest to you is this. Adapt, don't adopt, right? So the snow is coming. Don't be the brown bunny. Be the white bunny, right? Be the one that blends into your surroundings. Be the one that adapts with the changing situation. So just because I'm going to go over a bunch of things today does not mean every item is for you. Please take it with a grain of salt. Look at it and say, what's going to work with us? What's not going to work with us based on our culture, based on what things we actually need to measure, whatever it is. And above all, I'd really say take the big picture things which have to do with engaging your team, not just in the metrics themselves. You can get the best metrics and just put them out there and make them visible to everybody. But if you haven't engaged your team, you're never going to get the adoption and usage of those metrics up. So I'm going to talk a lot about all of those things as we go on today. I know a lot of you, I see a lot of familiar names out here already, so I'm getting a little embarrassed by, I need to kind of come up with some different way of introducing myself. But for those of you who I don't know yet, my name is Jeff Abels. I run a company. We're based in the southeastern United States. We've got people all over the place. We're called C5 Insight. And this is our groove, right? We do customer and employee engagement types of projects. So on the technical side, we're very Dynamics oriented. We're very Microsoft 365, Teams, Power Apps, all that kind of stuff oriented. But a lot of what we do is what we're talking about today, which is much more just just standard business process and people. And that's one of the things we found is really missing. When you have great technical experts, lots of training and know how to do things, but sometimes you don't have that bridge between those people and the consumers of the applications and the knowledge you're trying to distribute out there. So we spend a lot of our time on that. There's all my contact information. You might want to jot it down. If you have a question and for some reason I don't get to it today, ping me, connect with me. LinkedIn, just look me up by name. It's an unusual spelling. I think I'm the only one out there with a spelling like that, so you should be able to find it easily. And here's the personal side of me, right? So this is the furnace that burns inside of all of us, giving us passion to do what we do. My wife and I are recent empty nesters. We have two beautiful grown daughters who live on the coast of Virginia and the coast of North Carolina. We love hanging out with them and our sons-in-law. Biggest surprise for us in 2020 is our brand new first ever grandson. So there is Theodore Evergreen Tramolini. His parents believe in lots of syllables in their names, I guess. Here's our new empty nest buddy. That's Verdi. And there's my wife and I enjoying some of the things we love to do, drinking fine wine and other spirits, and riding a motorcycle together. So love to hear from you what your hobbies and passions are. Feel free, by the way, to share that. If you want to connect with other people in this session, put your LinkedIn contact information in there, or put your Twitter handle in there or something like that. I'll come back and look at it afterwards and follow you as well. But let's get some of the networking value out of this as well. I'm one guy. I have a small percentage of the knowledge that's represented in the 20-something plus people that are in this session right now. Share some knowledge with each other. Follow each other. Put that contact information out there. Okay, so this is the most important slide I'm going to share with you in today's session. If you only take one thing away, please take this slide away. I know we'll be recorded. You can come watch us, but maybe grab a screenshot of this as well, because this slide talks about how to build your dashboard. It's also how you'll build out any people first project, right? Just a CRM or internal communications or anything like that. So as you think about this, remember I said engaging your people is the all important thing I want to make sure I convey to you today. We're not going to spend a ton of time on it today, but this is one of the main slides I'll talk about it on. So as you think about how do I build best practice dashboards, start by listening to your team, right? Listen to your users. What do they want to measure in order to improve? What do they think are the metrics? And I don't just mean the top of the house, listen to them and do what they say. Obviously, you better do that too. But also everyone else, right? Your frontline people, if you really engage them in the conversation for a while, they're probably going to have the best ideas around, hey, here are the behaviors that actually lead to results that we should be measuring. Engage them in the conversation. Next, understand. So one of the most important things to listen for are the things that people don't say, not the things that people do say. So solutions and best practices, that's what you or whoever else is engaging with your team needs to look at when you look at this, to say, look, I hear what you're saying on this, but is this metric really going to give you what you want? Is that dashboard really going to be actionable for you, or is you just going to kind of look at it and say, that's cool, but it doesn't actually lead to anything? So that's where you need to marry your intellect or the knowledge of other people engaged in the project who are more hands-on with what you're hearing from your users. So listen, but also understand, right? Then you create your dashboards. Then you align the data science and your experience with business acumen to deliver something that actually gets used. And knowing is just a confession that we are all human. You are not going to get it right the first time. Everything needs to improve all the time, and expect messes. There's an old acronym, RODI. It stands for data that's redundant, outdated. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting the whole one. Redundant, outdated, trivial, inaccurate, or incomplete. And it talks about how data in our systems is messy. And with messy data, you don't build good dashboards. But remember, even your dashboards themselves become roddy. Even your dashboards themselves become messy. So expect to have to go in over time sometimes and say, hey, these 38 different dashboards we have, we're only using like half of them. Let's get the clutter out of there that's confusing people and help them focus on what they actually need to do. You're continuously improving. So listen, understand, connect, and know. So when you do that, we say you have become powered by luck. And that's what I want your mantra to be with dashboards is, how do I help my organization become more powered by luck? Not just in how I build the dashboards, but in what the dashboards help us to do with our customers and prospects and vendors and with each other. Then that's luck is what you do. Good luck is why you do it, right? So I talked about how you build your dashboards. Think about why you build your dashboards also. So connect your dashboards back to your organizational mission and values and purpose, because that's the heart of what you need to do. And that's what your leadership and executives ultimately want to do better. Yes, it's all about revenue or donations or the bottom line. That's really important. but most executives view those things as your pulse, not your reason for being, right? So, hey, we want to create a better culture. We want to create better experiences for our customers. We want to do some of these other things that don't feel quite as quantitative as what you would think you can do in dashboards. Find a way to quantify them. Find a way to connect your dashboards to who you are and why you do what you do. Okay, so I'm going to break this discussion out by topic. And given the amount of time we have today, I couldn't cover all the topics that I want to, but I'm going to cover these main three. So we're going to talk a little about sales, marketing, customer care, and then kind of a broad, etc. category at the end of it. And I've enlisted my buddies at Dunder Mifflin to add maybe a little bit of humor to this, a little bit of something to help you engage with a little bit better. So let's dive in and talk about sales first of all, because when it comes to the world we support with CRM projects, sales is one of the main ones that we have a lot of engagement with. So sales metrics and sales dashboards. One of my favorite things that I wind up talking to a lot of sales teams about is activity tracking. So a lot of sales teams talk about this being an area that influences their overall revenue number. And they say the more activities I can complete, the more likely we are to win new deals. So this can be super useful in really transactional types of relationships. So if you say, account management is very important to us, or just being there is very important to us, right? We support a lot of clients who say, pipeline management, that's cool, and maybe we need to do that some, but for us, a lot of our business is just driven by we are there when the customer is ready, right? So they happen to see us in their doorway, get that call from us, get that email from us, right at the right moment when they say, oh, I'm glad you called because this just broke down. I just ran out of inventory for this. We just had the special need over here. They don't really order through a pipeline, right? They're just kind of like inside sales, sort of. It's sort of a, I'll order something when I need it. I'm not going to tell you I'm going through a multi-week or multi-month evaluation and budgetary and all that kind of stuff. That's what opportunities are for, right? They're for sales projects. But a lot of sales is very transactional. And whether it is or not, sometimes transactional or interactional things lead to the strategic sales, the sales projects and pipelines and stuff like that. So here's how one person came out with it. When they sat down and talked across their team, they said in-person visits are really critical to our success. I love this client example. We work with tons of clients, but this one developed it right and pulled it off very, very well. So they set a goal as a team. They said, this is pre-COVID, by the way, so in-person visits have now obviously morphed with this client a little bit. But they said the more times we can be face-to-face in front of clients, dropping in on them in the course of a day, the more sales we win. We know we're going to move the needle for leadership by doing that. And if we do it right, we're going to be creating a better experience for our customers too, because that's how they want to buy. They don't want to say, go to the site and place an order, call an inside sales number and place an order, send me an email. All those things are available, but that's not how they work. They work on relationships. Hey, I like it when this person comes by, chats with me, and if I'm ready to buy something, I'm going to go ahead and place an order. So they set the goal, but then they set the goal as a team. They said, look, we're not going to pursue this as a bunch of individuals to drive individual performance. Ultimately, yes, we want to change individual performance, but we've got some super high performers that'll make 8, 10, 12 in-person visits per day. And you know what? They can't make any more visits per day than they already do. They're already top performers. But then we've got others who are at 5, 6, 7 visits per day, and they don't know how to raise their performance. So instead of making those people be always losing to the higher performers, they said, let's set a goal for our collective number of visits to go up by this amount. And you can see they benchmark. So they said on this particular chart you see here, the red line, that was their current level across the team. The green line, that's their targeted level. And if you look closely at that graph, once they got up above that green line, they pretty much stayed there. They permanently changed behavior. But if you look at the permanent behavior change, there's a small percentage change among the top performers. There is a significant percentage change among the bottom performers, which is kind of the opposite of what you often get when you set individual types of goals. Now, these guys were a very distributed sales team too. So the team themselves came up with the metric. They said, management said, here's what we think you should do for the big picture, and they said, here's how we can influence that big picture. But then they set this up in Microsoft Teams using Power BI to report on data coming out of Dynamics 365 because they were a distributed sales team. And they said, we don't get to meet together physically more than a couple times a year, maybe 3 times a year, but we want to encourage each other. We want to have a round table. So they set up a channel with a Power BI chart in Teams, and within that channel, They talked about it. Every week when they met for their meeting, they talked about it. They put it into the chat. They had a video meeting. They talked about that. So when someone wasn't doing well, someone else could kind of encourage them along. So there's the metric. But the more important story is, how did they come to the metric, and how did they actually work as a team to actually consume and use that metric to make a difference? You want to go more into activity management? I did a session for these guys called Better Activity Management. Check it out. It can be very challenging to do activity management right, but it can also be really important to get it right. As you put all these metrics together, something you want to think about are the metric types. So these are the 4 primary metric types that we've defined within our organization when we consult with clients. Go search on the web, you'll find some other definitions, but they kind of all roll up into this. So the first one is your BHAGs, your big, hairy, audacious goals, or just your big metrics, your corporate-wide metrics, right? We need to move annual revenue up by 15% in the next 12 months or something like that. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. The thing about big, hairy, audacious goals, or just in general, your corporate-level metrics, is they're lagging indicators. What that means is you don't really know if you've succeeded until you've reached the finish line, right? So yes, you can measure progress towards it and kind of say, okay, day to day, do we need to move up? Do we need to not? But what it really means is, I don't know what I'm doing to contribute to this. All I know is I do a bunch of stuff, a bunch of other people do a bunch of stuff, and maybe together we make that number. And that's not a bad thing. Those are important, but that's kind of the nature of those kinds of goals. Then you've got the more conventional, what you've heard of as KPI, or key performance indicator. And just like those say, those are indicators that you're moving towards your BHAGs, right? It's an indicator. Achieving a KPI is not necessarily success. It's a sign that you're moving towards success. They tend to be, not always, but they tend to be somewhat more leading indicators, right? If I do these things, I can achieve success. Now, one that we created, which is really another form of a KPI, we call it a SQAG, partly because we like acronyms, partly because it rhymes with BHAG, but it is a small, quickly attainable goal. And the difference between a SQAG and a KPI is simply this. A SQAG is 100% within control of the person or the team that you've assigned it to, right? So a KPI might be something like, we need to have over $8 million that we expect to close within 60 days in our pipeline. That's a KPI. Not really totally in control of it. I can do some stuff to try to influence it, but I might have people who just stop asking for proposals. COVID might happen, and it changes exactly what's going to happen in that pipeline. A SQAG might be, like my earlier example, I need to make this many calls per day. I need to go to this many networking events. It's 100% within your control. Good example of a BHAG and a SQAG. A BHAG on the personal side is lose 30 pounds, right? I'd like to make that BHAG, right? But it's elusive, it's long-term. I can't wake up one morning and decide I'm going to do it, and by the end of the day, I've achieved it. But my SQAG can be raise my pulse by 20 minutes today and every day. I am in 100% control of that SQAG. Now, I might need to reprioritize some things. I might need to change my life around a little bit, but I can do that. The same is true for your team. So we had interesting conversations in that previous case study I gave to you before, where people were saying things like, hey, look, if you want me to have this many meetings and get those reported inside a CRM, you're going to have to give me a more efficient experience, because it takes me too long to put this stuff into the system for us to measure. Great, let's make that more efficient. We get it down from about 7 minutes to about 1.5 minutes for them to get their activities in there. Hey, if you want to actually meet that goal, Jeff, as a bottom performer and move up, you need to pre-schedule those. Don't just kind of start showing up each day, but actually plan your week in advance. Oh, that's a training issue. I need to own that. Doesn't really have to do with CRM, has to do with my personal behaviors. Okay, I'm going to do that. Hey, boss, if you keep meeting with us for a half a day every single Monday morning, that's really going to hurt our chances of making this goal. Can we do something like move those to bi-weekly, shorten them, do whatever we need to do? Yes, we can make those adjustments. SQAGs kind of help you to have these conversations to say, how can I impact something that I know is going to impact the big number, but that I can see right in front of me? And then there's process metrics. So these are things that are a little bit more like awareness and influence. So an example process metric might be, it takes 5 calls on average to convert a lead. Now, you might work on trying to bring that down. You may have success with that, you may not. But a process metric helps you understand, where in the process can I improve, and where in the process do I just need to own that that's a process. So that particular one, for another client, they looked at it and realized this is about how many times it takes to call to actually convert a lead into an opportunity in our pipeline. Well, they looked at it and said, like 90% of our reps call once or twice, get discouraged, or just have it slip through the cracks, and they never call again. And like 60% of their potential deals were sitting out there as stale, unworked leads that were now working with somebody else. So process metrics help you identify those things and set your strategy accordingly. So behold this report. It is the most beautiful yet worthless visual in all of Dynamics 365 CRMdom. So when you first see this, you probably think, you know, cool, look, I can visually see my pipeline, right? But what do you really know when you look at this? You can't really tell if your pipeline's better or worse than it was last week. I mean, maybe you remember that the purple part was bigger and the orange part was smaller, but maybe there's just more things in there overall. So it's actually overall good news, right? Unless you remember the numbers and track them and all that. You don't have an idea of what this month looks like. You're just kind of like, here's everything in my pipeline right now. Maybe it's my team pipeline, maybe it's my individual one. You don't even know if your pipeline as a whole is in good shape, right? Like, what does this need? Should the blue one be really big because things disqualify as I get closer to the bottom? What looks normal? What looks right for this? So let me show you a couple of other reports that are way, way more useful than this pipeline report. Now, as you soak those up and look at them, you probably go, these look really boring, and they don't look that much more actionable than another report to me. But if I look at these closely, first of all, I can see some things are a little more meaningful. Like, here's just the total number of opportunities that are out there right now. And maybe it's a total number of opportunities closing within the next 6 months, or maybe it's total number of open ones overall, whatever. It's just a raw number. But I get used to looking at that every week, and I go, I can see that number go up or down. I know what that looks like. And you can do that around a goal too, to maybe make it a little bit more meaningful. On the other side, oh, I'm looking at our total pipeline size for the next 6 months, or I'm looking at the weighted pipeline. So if you're using probabilities in your pipeline, you can do a weighted calculation. So alone, those are still, I would contend, a little more useful than the funnel. But when you start to now put it into a trend, and these make it easier to think about trends, you can now start to say, hey, I can see these things changing over time, right? So that blue marble, that blue ball we saw on the slide underneath there, the picture underneath there, that's the blue line at the top. I look at that and I go, oh, all of a sudden I know if my total number of opportunities overall is going up or down or plateauing or whatever. Oh, look at that orange bar. I see, wow, in the last 6 months, my weighted pipeline, it's kind of steadily moving up. That's good news. And the gray bar, my total estimated pipeline, also moving up a little bit. There was one anomaly back there about the halfway point where the gray bar got super high. It's probably like one gigantic deal that came in that had a low probability, but everything else looks kind of normal to me. Now I can start to look at this and see patterns and even know things like, well, gosh, you know what? We are making our numbers overall right now. So these are probably the right places for us to sustain. So if we want to kind of stay where we are, we need to have this many opportunities at this size and that kind of stuff in our pipeline. So now you probably look at that and say, wait, that doesn't look like a CRM report. That looks like an Excel report. And you would be right, because CRM does not track time series data very well. When I look at CRM, I can only see what CRM looks like right now. Let me give you an example. So you might think, okay, I want to see what my pipeline looked like last month and right now. Well, if I try to compare it to last month in CRM, some of those opportunities, their value has changed. They've gone up, they've gone down. Some of them have closed. Some of them some new opportunities have been added. Maybe some have been completely deleted if you allow your users to do that. So you really have no idea how many opportunities you had, what their value was, or anything like that a month ago. Now with activities, you can do a little bit more time series stuff, separate topic, but a lot of this critical revenue stuff, you really can't. Accounting systems are a little bit better at this information. CRM systems aren't, because you tend to just update it overall and you lose the historical data. So how do you track time series data like that last chart that I just showed you coming out of CRM? 3 potential methods for it. One is manual tracking. So you can rekey those metrics into Excel each week, pull up the dashboard I showed you, the blue dot and the 2 bars, and say, let's key those into Excel. That's actually what was being done in that example that I shared with you. Downside to that, 1 week was missed. Now we have a gap. We can never cover it again because that information has been lost forever unless we try to manually cobble something together. But it's a poor man's solution. There's also some upside to doing the keying into Excel. So if we have time, you want to ask about that, we'll talk about that at the end. But I'm generally not a fan of having users rekey things, but I've actually witnessed the benefit in that particular case that sometimes happens. Another approach you can use, a shadow entity. So shadow entity is this idea of you might create an entity called opportunity history and associate it with opportunities. And every time a key field on an opportunity changes, you just update it in that shadow entity. So it's got some of the same fields as the opportunity, not many, you might only need 3 or 5 or 8 in the shadow entity, but you say, okay, on this date, so you have a date timestamp, this field changed from this value to this value. And really have different columns for each of the different fields. So you say, this field is now this value. And now you can run those dashboards on that shadow entity that's time series because it's got a date stamp for everything going on. So you can look at how things appeared at different times. That shadow entity can be created with just configuration skills, and it can be populated with configuration, workflow, Power Automate types of skills as well. So another kind of, low-end skunkworks type of solution. Not my favorite. Now, what a lot of people then say is, well, wait a minute, that sounds a lot like the audit entity. Can I just use the audit entity instead of creating a shadow entity? Technically, you can, but the audit entity is really hard to pull reports on. The way it stores data and structures it alone is difficult, but even the way you access it via the API, you're not going to do those reports directly in Dynamics. You're going to have to pull them out into Power BI or do something with that anyway. Or the third and possibly the best option is to use a BI solution like Power BI, because Power BI actually can pull information out of CRM periodically. It can store it in its own little database, data mart, data warehouse, whatever you want to call it. And so you're not adding any new data to CRM. You're just creating that time series data at the same time you're updating the database that Power BI is reporting on. So a lot of people think, oh, Power BI, like I just point that at Dynamics and it's reporting directly off of Dynamics information, right? Not really. What's really doing is it's saying, okay, I'm going to point to Dynamics, but what I really know is periodically I'm going to pull all the data in from Dynamics, put it somewhere else, make it available to Power BI. And that process of putting data somewhere else, you can configure that. It's called ETL, extract, transform, load. You do transformations to get that time series data in there. Time series, really important for almost everything. So that's one of the missing links in any kind of CRM system dashboard. It's not a Dynamics issue. Any CRM system does not do a great job with that. And if you want to help your reps and your managers make better decisions, you need time series data for them. Okay, last metric for the sales function. This is kind of the advanced level function, but what I like about sales velocity is it really looks at if you are doing pipeline tracking, and not everybody needs to, but if you need to track a pipeline, sales velocity is a great way to look at most, if not all, of the key drivers of pipeline success, revenue. So the definition over there is that how effectively and efficiently are we generating revenue? And so the number you're generating there at the end of it is what you would call the revenue run rate. Now you might say it's our daily revenue run rate, it's our weekly or monthly revenue run rate. You'll have to decide what the frequency is based on your unique situation. The formula is over there for it, and I've also given you a link to a blog where you can go read all about it from a great company called HubSpot. But if you look closely at the table over here, let's see if I can get my mouse over here, you can kind of see here's sales velocity. And sales velocity is a function of the number of opportunities, the average revenue per opportunity, the average win rate that you have at that period in time, and the average cycle length, the time it takes from creation to closing an opportunity. All of those contribute to creating this formula. So what you're saying is, wow, look, our sales velocity went down here. Now, if all you were monitoring is something like average deal revenue, you might go, that took a little bit of a hit. That's not that great, but it's not that bad. Or worse yet, if all you were monitoring was win rate, you would say, hey, we're doing better. Our win rate has actually gone up. But because revenue's gone down a little bit, because number of opportunities have come down a little bit, and because cycle length has gone up a little bit, your sales velocity took a pretty big hit between 1 month and the next month. So this kind of allows you to go through quickly and say, all little knobs I can adjust to improve my sales cycle, here's what they are. And here's one number that explains all of them. And when I see that number not being where I need it to be, then I go look at the underlying causality to help me fine tune that and improve it. Now here's the show me the numbers, show me the metrics slide, right? So what we tried to do here is go through a lot of our history and put together a lot of the metrics we pulled, we've been asked to pull. over time. On the far left over there are some of the ways you want to slice and dice these. So there's the metric, but then there's all the ways you want to slice and dice a metric. For example, we talked about activities up front. Now you can just say, okay, so how many activities did we do? Well, you know, in Dynamics, there's a lot of activity types, right? There's emails, there's phone calls, there's appointments. You can create custom ones, there's tasks you do. But even within those, and in the case of the example I shared with you, there were subtypes, right, that weren't even included out of the box. In this case, they said it has to be in-person visits. So I might have an appointment to talk to somebody on the phone. Great, but that's not an in-person visit. So they had to modify those entities to say, here's other ways we want to slice and dice it. And by the time you start looking at it by industry and by time and by all those different other things, all of a sudden there can be a huge number of metrics here. The key is not to figure all that out and give people a massive report that lets you look at all those things. It's to look at the ones that are important to you. So this is my attempt at saying, if the numbers I gave you weren't the right ones to start with, or even if you're not sure and you're talking to people and you're looking for some brainstorming fodder, here's a big list of items you can look at to think about your sales metrics. And I'll do that for our other ones as well. All right, let's talk marketing now. So I love marketing departments. I love working with all the departments we work with, but marketing is particularly challenging because marketing has more technology than virtually any other group we engage with, including the IT department. You go do an assessment of what marketing has to use. In fact, let me bring up the next slide. This will give you some example of all the technologies marketing departments need to look at, right? Look at the word cloud there. That small image down there in the corner is actually different technologies by solution type. This is the overall sales process that marketing supports. And every single one of those has multiple metrics you can use to judge what you're doing. Marketers have a very fun but challenging and sometimes stressful job because they've got a lot of different hats to wear to serve everybody. So that's one of the reasons why I like to engage with them. If you want to learn more about marketing automation platforms and some more details around how to measure things, there's a link to a session I did this past summer on that topic. So as marketers look at all this, one of the questions they have to ask is, so what do I measure? There are a lot of metrics that come out of the box with marketing tools like, well, how many clicks did I get on this email that I sent out there? How many opens did I get? What did unsubscribes look like? What about landing page visits? How many of those landing page visits actually turned into a bona fide lead? How many of those were actually worked by sales? The list goes on and on and on. So trying to boil this down to what are the most important metrics for marketing to think about, here's what I have found by and large. The first one, and this is, I think this is our term. I don't think I've really heard this term used other places, but we kind of developed it because it relates to the next term you're going to hear, marketing generated leads. So what we mean by marketing generated leads are leads that marketing generated. Quite simply, it doesn't mean they were qualified, doesn't mean they were good leads or bad leads or any leads at all. It just means these are things that came into the top of the funnel, right? So all those email conversion rates and landing pages and trade shows and events and all of that kind of stuff, all of those are really there to ultimately create leads in the top of the funnel and maybe move leads down in the funnel a little bit too. So first job for marketing is, what are we helping to put into the top of the funnel? Okay, and I've worked with clients where this is not, they're working with a very static market and there's almost never new leads to generate. Hold on for the next slide for that conversation. But most marketing departments said part of my job is to generate leads that we can then work as a team. And maybe marketing owns inside sales, maybe sales owns inside sales, but marketing has to kind of get to the top of the funnel. So that's what this is. It does not mean that they're qualified. Now, you might do some filtering from them, like, hey, if we got spam in our website, and you do whenever you have a contact us form on your website, maybe marketing's going to go in and set the status of those real quickly to make sure that those get filtered out, that those don't count as anything because we know that they're no good at all, right? So maybe you do a little bit of cleanup, but maybe you also generate some leads that are not yet qualified. Maybe you've come to this webinar today and you're not really a qualified lead, right? You and I know each other. Maybe you go download something from our website or shoot me an email or something like that. Okay, that's a generated lead. But as we look at it, we go, this company, you know, they're all set. They don't want to work with us. They're happy with whatever it is. They're just generated. They're not qualified. Now, let's stay in touch. Let's continue to nurture because maybe at some point you will become marketing qualified. So we don't want to focus purely on marketing qualified because depending on our business, that might be only 10% of what's actually generated. So get marketing generated, then think about a marketing qualified lead. So marketing qualified lead is essentially, my definition for it is, It's a lead that marketing says, sales, this is ready for you to follow up with. Now, that might have a lot of different subpoints depending on what your organization is. Some leads are probably born qualified, right? You hit our website and download the CPR for CRM downloadable item and put a note in there saying, we're really frustrated with our CRM and we want to get a proposal from someone who can do a health check for us. I'm saying that is a marketing qualified lead. That can go off to sales right away. On the other hand, you might hit our website and download the same white paper and just say, just curious, I'm just shopping. You might be our competitor. Probably 80% of the people who download our CPR white paper are our competitors. Okay, they're not going to be qualified leads. So you have to come up with your own definition. Sometimes that definition is based on very specific rules, like, okay, it was this kind of landing page for this kind of request. We know it's marketing qualified. Sometimes it's more of a process. You can see that process diagram we put together for one client over there, where they kind of said, okay, look, depending on some different circumstances, we're going to say not yet qualified or qualified based on how we encountered them, what they asked for, whatever that is. Kind of some very static rules in place. Getting more sophisticated, you can have scoring algorithms in there. So you might say, you know, they never did that one thing that makes them a marketing qualified lead, but we do know they've clicked enough, they've visited enough, they've submitted enough forms, we've encountered them in enough events, and now they have a score that we say, somebody in sales needs to call this person because they are very engaged with us, but they just haven't talked to anybody here yet. It's time to have that level of engagement with them. All of those become tools in your backpack to say, what quantifies a lead as a marketing qualified lead, and I want to measure that because that is a big important part of marketing's job as well. You don't want to give every lead to sales. If 90% of them you can say they're not going to do anything with us for a long time. Okay, marketing generated, not qualified. My job in marketing, now figure out how to get them marketing qualified as well. Another important thing for marketing to measure now are conversions. So marketing qualified is a conversion of sorts too. In fact, even marketing generated is kind of a conversion. But when I'm thinking about conversions, I'm thinking about what's happening a little more downstream of the marketing department. So when most marketers begin to conceptualize this, they think of kind of this linear process like this, right? It's kind of like, okay, we generated it, something happened, we decided it's qualified. Someone in sales calls them. That's one conversion. Okay, sales is going to call them, converted them to that. Sales is going to say they're sales qualified. Maybe that's another conversion. They're one. Yay, that's another conversion, right? Those are all good conversions. Reality, it's a lot more complicated than that in our content marketing based world these days, I think. So without going through this one in a ton of detail, you kind of get a sense of, you know, this is not untypical, right? So like, there's my core 4 steps, but you know what happened? Sales tried to call, they tried and tried, they never got through. They called, they emailed, they called, they emailed, they said, disqualify this, I'm not gonna work with it. Marketing said, let's keep nurturing it. So they did a little nurture campaign to it. Maybe that drove them to visit a page, but nothing happened. But then at some point they visit a booth and like, you know what, you guys have been in touch with me, you do great stuff. And this is kind of a real life scenario that actually happened for us, where someone said, you guys really know your content marketing, you've really talked to us well, the time just wasn't right. Can someone call us? Great. Back to sales to then try to call them. You go create the opportunity, you submit the proposal, and uh-oh, we did not win it. We lost it. But then through some social interaction later, all of a sudden someone goes, oh, I saw this post on LinkedIn. By the way, we need to talk to you guys again. Lo and behold, the deal is won. Now, how do you track all of those conversions, right? So you need to use source campaigns and watch the number of campaigns and all the contacts that happen with this person over their history, because you don't want to just say, wow, look, that social interaction led to a conversion to a one deal. Well, that social interaction was sitting on a foundation a mile wide and a mile deep that led to a great relationship with them. So as you think about conversions, think about sort of full life cycle conversions in your marketing department. So very top of the funnel, that's kind of what we talked about, but even backing up before that, you probably want to do things like AdWord conversion rates and have integration with Google AdWords so that you're not just generating things that create leads for you from Google, you're generating things from Google that create leads that end up as one opportunities. If you have not integrated your AdWords tracking to track conversions coming from CRM back into Google, you're really not optimizing your marketing spend very well, something you should definitely look into doing. Content downloads, all those front-end conversions. Then your middle of the funnel, right? These are kind of where you're doing your marketing qualification of your leads. So what happens with that? And some of these are more process metrics. How long does it take to do this? When really is the right time to do it? How many of these things are actually being valuable to the sales team? So I can actually keep improving my MQL process to give the sales team the best leads that they can possibly work. And then your end of funnel ones, which are really kind of from the point that sales takes over until sales finishes their job. And marketing wants to track them in a good symbiotic relationship, right? Sales and marketing kind of knock heads together a lot in most organizations, but in reality, they should hold each other accountable. So marketing starts to say, hey, we've sent sales 1,000 leads over the past 6 months. Now that we're looking at conversion rates, we're seeing that 800 of those leads are still opportunities. And we know it's about a 6-week process to close an opportunity on average. So why are 80% of our leads still in the pipeline? Let's do something about that. Let's have a conversation so that if we're giving you really bad leads, we need the feedback to know that so we can improve it. And if you're not working the leads, well, you need feedback so that you can update your process to make sure we're doing this the way we need to do it together. So activity tracking, by the way, becomes a super important part of that. If all you know is I gave it to sales and the opportunity is open and I have no idea if they've been talking to them or not, guess what? You've just lost a huge amount of the value for your ability to track things. So those kind of conversion tracking's really important. Now, if you're in a marketing department and you're really struggling and you want a lot of metrics and you want them now, one thing I'd suggest you look at is a new tool from ClickDimensions called ClickDimensions Intelligent Dashboards. And I believe this set of metrics and dashboards will work for you even if you are not a ClickDimensions customer already, but they do integrate with Dynamics. So many metrics are available in here. Now, my challenge as I've looked at this is a challenge I would then give to you as a potential client of, look, this is a great place if you want to kind of have all the dashboards pre-calculated for you, just do the configuration. But next thing to do is really focus on how am I going to use these? How am I going to get this into the smaller set that's going to make sense for me in my marketing department? So it's okay to start with a big best practice dashboard like this, as long as you say, well, what I'm really going to do is start with all this stuff and winnow it down to just the right stuff for me, one thing at a time, and maybe grow it back up again. Or to start with nothing and add a few metrics at a time. But if you just throw something like this out there and go, here it is, gang, look at these great dashboards, people are going to go, I don't know where to begin. I'm kind of lost. And that goes with any big dashboard you roll out. If you want a demo of that, ping me. I'll be glad to set one up. Again, whether you have ClickDimensions or not, it's a very cool option for you to consider. Here's my show me the metrics slide for marketing. Again, you can see lots and lots of stuff on the slide here. Over on the left, lots of ways to slice and dice things. In the middle, as I've done with the other slide here too, more behavioral BHAG types of metrics, more status process type of metrics. Sorry, behavioral SQUAG type of metrics. And on the far right are the BHAG, results, the outcome type of metrics that we're trying to get towards. So logically, you kind of move from left to right. Here are the behaviors we need to have to create these, to feed into these processes to create the results that we need on the other end of things. Okay, I think we're doing pretty good on time, about 15 minutes left. So customer care, the last main focused group I want to talk about. Customer care is really amazing too, and that I like working with customer care teams because they tend to be more operational in what they do. Sales and marketing, a little more, tactical, a little more personality based, whereas customer care, although they're also customer facing, they tend to have really good adoption of the tools that they use. They tend to be really good at following consistent processes, and so they create really good data. But they also have to make decisions really quickly because they're dealing with customers in real time, right? Face to face, one at a time. So as you think about all the types of dashboards you might need to create, this is one list to think about as you think it through, because usually you don't want to do a lot of mixing of these different types of dashboards into one, right? You might let your users create their own dashboards based on reports and they can maybe mash a few of these things up. But if you cross purposes at this level, sometimes what happens is you just create a very confusing hodgepodge, right? So a strategic dashboard is more, these are BHAG level measurements. These are kind of like, is the wind blowing in the right direction, right? Is the tide rising? Are we kind of in general going the way we want to go? You might drill down, and I have that at the bottom, into some of the causality, but the main stuff at the top of it is just really quick, like how are things going in the business right now, right? So strategic dashboards. Then think about operational dashboards. So these are more the kind you'd see in a customer care group, but they're focused on a shorter time range. They're either what a manager needs to use to manage their team, or even what a user needs to use to manage their specific user-based workload. And then there's tactical ones, very user-focused, right? So individual contributor data that helps people prioritize work and make very small course corrections. Then there are goals. So those are things you might have agreed to together. So you might have a squag. A squag is not a goal. A squag is a metric. Then you might set a goal around that squag. Remember the red line, green line I showed you earlier? The squag was number of in-person visits. The red line was where we are now. The green line was the goal. And so that was a great one to put right at the top of that dashboard to kind of say, here's the needle moving. Here's what our goal is. Are we above or below the goal for whatever period of time we're tracking? And then all of those can potentially have analytical drill down underneath them. Analytical drill down means I see the number, let me understand the number better, right? So it's not just, hey, Jeff, you haven't had enough in-person visits. Well, I thought that I had enough in-person visits. What's going on? Let me drill down a little bit. Oh, I haven't set half of my activities to complete yet. Okay, I need to go back and fix that up. I pre-planned great, but I don't actually check them off as complete. Great, that's a simple one. There might be a lot of other analytical drill downs, right? I talked about sales velocity. That begs the discussion around, well, what's the analytical drill down behind that to say, why is our sales velocity off? What's going on here? Slicing and dicing that lots of different ways. Marketing, huge area for you to do analytical drill downs with. So this is actually a dashboard that I don't even know if you're aware of these in Dynamics. They're relatively newcomer to Dynamics 365, the customer engagement series of products, whether it's sales, customer care, omni-channel, marketing, whatever it is. When you go to entities, as you can see in this case, I'm clicked on the case entity because I'm focusing on customer care. You actually have a button at the top that says Show Dashboard. And in Dynamics, they call this an entity dashboard. So it's not like your normal dashboard, right, where you just go up to dashboards and you can have dashboards from across lots of entities. This is a dashboard that's very operational that says, here's information about this entity I'm currently looking at, but in a much more visual format than a regular view. So over here, I can see that here's my cases dashboard. Here's a bunch of information about my cases. Here's 3 different views. They're put together as card views rather than our typical row and column feeling views, but it lets me actually have it pre-sliced different ways, and all of this interacts. So if I'm in customer care and I say, hey, you know what? I need to go work my work queue, but I need to go find things that are either a match for my skill set or the highest priority ones first. Well, if I come over here and click the blue bar under high priority here, everything on this page is going to modify to show just the high priority items. And then I can go down and work those and move on to work my workflow however I need to work it. So this is a great example of an operational dashboard. And you have a lot of configuring flexibility with this, some frustrating limitations, just like anything else, but there's some really cool stuff to use in here. So if you're using particularly the customer care pieces, take a look at these. These can be really, really helpful for you to help your people work through their workload efficiently and effectively. And our customer care, show me the metrics slide. Again, this will be available for you afterwards. I think I've already given them the PDF version of all this. Okay, last broad area, the et cetera area, right? So what are some other topics we should talk about if we're gonna have this general conversation about dashboards? So remember the movie City Slickers? If you're my age, you might. It might be dating me a little bit, but Curly, that's the guy with the cowboy hat over there, he's describing the secret to life to a guy from the city who has a very complicated life. And he tells him the secret to life is just one thing. And he says, what is my one thing? And he says, that's what you have to find out. And that's often what you need to do with your dashboards to start with too. We tend to kind of get excited, look at all these great numbers we can show people. We want to be a data-driven company. Data-driven is incredibly important. And if you're not far enough along that trajectory yet, you do need to get there. It's urgent. You're not going to keep up if you don't do it. But if you give all your players on the team all the numbers all at once, they're not going to know what to do. It's going to be like, drinking from the fire hydrant, right? So don't do that. Find just that one thing. Engage your team. Go back to that very first example I gave you. They had hundreds of numbers they could have looked at, and they said, this is our just one thing for this team that we're going to focus on right now. Now they've progressed over time, and now that one thing, they still have it up there a little bit, a little corner somewhere, and they go look at it every now and then, but they've permanently changed that behavior. Now they're looking at another just one thing. We're going to focus on this for a quarter, and then we'll put it up there too. And as they're doing it, they're gradually getting used to more metrics are on their dashboard. They're becoming more data-driven in what they're doing, but Don't give them the coach's dashboard on day one, right? You look at football coaches have their, their Surface computers, and they've got hundreds of metrics on there that they're looking at in real time and then between games and everything like that. But players have a very small number of them, right? Receiving yards, like I need to get that metric. That's my one thing. If I can get that number, I'm doing my part to contribute to what this organization is trying to accomplish. That's what you want to create for your people. So give them that just one thing and engage them in a conversation to get there. Now, it seems like it should go without saying, but this is a huge part of what we do when we engage with clients often is your metrics and your dashboards are only as good as your data. And your data is only as good as the processes that are leading to the creation of your data. And by the way, your processes and your data and your dashboards, that's what helps you make decisions. So understand the root cause. If your dashboards aren't being used, sometimes that's because people have lost faith in the data. That's sometimes because you don't have a good process. Sometimes it's chicken and egg. One thing I run into all the time is C-level executives saying things like, well, look, I get all my reports out of ERP because I don't trust those numbers from CRM. Well, you know why the numbers in CRM are no good? Because you don't get your numbers out of it, right? Chicken and egg. Once that CFO starts saying, I'm using this to make operational decisions about budgets I'm going to approve based on how much is in the pipeline right now, that information ideally trickles out to everyone else and they start to go, we better have good numbers in here because all of our future depends on it. It starts to change the framework a little bit. One thing I like to say as a CRM guy is stop asking your ERP system CRM questions, right? Why are you asking customer-facing questions of this system that's made for BHAGs, right? It's made for lagging metrics. CRM is your leading metrics solution. Use the heck out of it for that, and it will have an impact on your lagging metrics. If all you ever do is measure lagging, look, the rear view of my car is about that big. The front window is bigger than my hands can fit in here. I like to drive using my front view window more than my rear view. Use your front view. Get those metrics out of CRM into there. Here's a bunch of adoption behavior metrics in this general category for you. Please remember, at least I'm not a fan of adoption for the sake of adoption. Adoption is more the metric of your project team that's helping to do your customer engagement process overall, right? So it's not a metric you're going to give to your sales team saying, we're going to have this adoption metric. Adoption is not the end game. Changing the bottom line, changing the customer experience, those are the end games. These are KPIs for people who are helping to implement your project saying, why aren't we meeting these metrics? Is it too hard to use? We're not giving enough training? Do we not have enough carrots? Do we not have enough sticks? What is it? What do we need to get? There's our CEO not engaged. How do we do that? I did a great session last week that I think is recorded, probably available about now, called CRM in the C-suite, talking very specifically about that. It's a great one to go take a look at if you're interested. So wrap up here, just a couple of closing thoughts to give you guys before I send you on your way today. This great research comes from IBM. So it was done a number of years ago. They interview about 2,000 of the largest organizations around the globe, and they say, what's the difference between the best and the rest? And what IBM found was the number 1, 2, and 3 differentiators had to do with data. Your ability to capture it and access it, your ability to draw insights out of it, that's what you're doing with your dashboards, and your ability to translate those insights into actions. Remember, dashboards are only good if they actually get used, right? One of my old mentors used to say, I kind of geek out on knowledge and stuff. One of my mentors used to say, that's great, Jeff. What's the application? If you can't apply this knowledge to do something, it's been worthless to you. Interesting, maybe, but worthless. And dashboards are all about application. So it doesn't do you any good to have a bunch of beautiful dashboards that never get applied. So all 3 of these things are part of the dashboard journey that you're on. Now, I started with this, and I'm going to close with this, but if you look closely, the word's a little bit different. When I presented this to you in the first place, I said, this is how you build your dashboards. But this slide is what you build your dashboards to do, right? So interestingly enough, this way that you want to engage with people to create great dashboards, why do you create great dashboards? You create them because every organization on this earth exists to serve people. The people inside and outside of the organization, right? And that's why you build dashboards, so that dashboards help you to better listen to those audiences, deeply understand them, connect with them and make better decisions, know your results so you can continuously improve and be deeply connected to your purpose for being, for your corporate purpose for being. It helps to drive good employee engagement because really the ultimate reality is data really is the raw material of the 21st century, right? The things we're building aren't the things we built with the fuel of the 20th century. The things we're building have to do with people and relationships. Fast Company published an article about 2 weeks ago. It was an amazing article, and essentially it said, over the next 10 years, we're going to solve problems that seem unsolvable today. Our society is going to be radically transformed. And at the heart of that transformation is all this digital stuff. And at the heart of all this digital stuff is data. Data is what we're going to use to know each other better, to solve our problems better, to do things we can't imagine doing today. So this is why I'm passionate about it. This is why I think we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our colleagues. We owe it to our companies to become more data-driven, because if we don't, we are going to be left behind. And I think that's the one scary dark side of this overall is we need to be on board with this and advancing, because if we're not, it will be like being illiterate in another 10 or 20 years. And I don't know if Fast Company is exactly right on that time. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball, but I am a believer in this. By looking at history and not just wishful thinking, humanity has done this before. At radical transformations, there is a lot of fear and uncertainty. And on the other side of virtually every transformation, there is resolving problems that we weren't dreaming of resolving when we started that transformation. So very cool stuff, very exciting stuff. And that little picture at the bottom, that's all the little gauges that you use to manage a really complex piece of machinery. And that's what dashboards are. Your organization is a super complex piece of machinery. Dashboards are ways for you to go, wait a minute, something's not working over here. Let's loosen this valve a little bit to send some more data over here, send some more customers down there. That's what dashboards are all about doing. So I promise you some things in this. Here's how to get back in touch with me to get those. If you saw the links and you want them, there's all my contact info. Shoot me a quick email and let me know, or reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn, however you want to do it. But reach out. I get you some great ebooks on CPR for CRM. We've got a Microsoft Teams ebook there for those of you who are kind of using it but maybe struggling a little bit. And I did a 10-part Power BI training session. 10 parts, but it's really only about 75 minutes of information. I'll send you a link to that as well. If you like luck, grab the book. Love to engage with you. This is what we do. So reach out if I can do anything for you, and let me kind of turn it over to Robin to see if there have been any questions.
Thanks, Jeff. And nope, no questions to this moment, either in the Q&A box or the chat. And we are just at time. So I'm going to say thank you, Jeff, very much for presenting.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and Robin. Thank you.